Hello there everybody. Welcome to another teaching video from our teaching video series. I'm Joe from Joe's Corner, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the subtle differences and sometimes not so subtle differences between Magic the Gathering and Force of Will. That way people who are coming from Magic the Gathering can acquaint themselves with Force of Will faster. There are a handful of differences that really change how the game is played, and I'm going to try and get through hopefully all of them. But, if I miss any, let me know in the comments below. Anyways, so I'm going to try and go through kind of the beginning of the game, how you make your deck, the actual flow of the game, and then little extra bits that I couldn't really fit in anywhere. So the first thing I want to talk about is obviously, in Magic you have 20 life. All the damage is dealt in 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s. In Force of Will, instead, the numbers are just bigger, and it's the hundreds and 300s and 600s and 1000s. So you start with 4,000 life in Force of Will. That's a pretty, that one's pretty obvious. When you create your decks, you have a 40 card deck in Force of Will. You will not have any mana inside of those decks. In Magic, you have a 60 card deck, obviously. So in Force of Will, instead of drawing a 7 card hand, you will draw a 5 card hand. When you're creating your decks, you will have 3 separate decks. One of them will be your Rune deck, which will have 5 cards in it. One of them will be your Stone deck, which will have 10 cards in them. And one of them will be your main deck, which again has 40 cards in them. Your Stone deck will be where all of your mana is. In Force of Will, stones are lands and mana is will. When you start the game, the person who is going second will have what is called an energized token. This is very similar to the coin in Hearthstone. It means that you can sacrifice your energized token and create a will that is that color energized token. Now, when choosing who goes first or second, it's very similar to Magic, where you roll a dice, or you roll 2 dice, and whoever gets the highest dice roll will be the one who goes first. Force of Will cuts out any choosing first or second. When you mulligan in Force of Will, instead of discarding your entire hand, it is very similar to a mulligan in Hearthstone. You choose a certain number of cards in your first 5 card hand, and you put those on the bottom of the deck, and then you draw. So if you mulligan 3, you put those 3 to the bottom of your deck, and you will draw 3 more cards. Now in Force of Will, you have what's known as a ruler. The ruler is very similar to the commander in Magic the Gathering, in the commander format. Force of Will borrows a lot from Magic based off of their commander and the ruler, and this is one of those things. Now I'm going to start getting into kind of the flow of the game. How the game is played, what your steps are. It's very similar to Magic, but there are some slight differences that can be confusing to new Magic players. So the first really different part is how your upkeep plays in Force of Will. Now on your upkeep, you draw a card, and then there's a priority phase, and you can use your will or stones to produce mana and play instant cards and play stuff during that priority phase before your upkeep. Now, after that priority phase, you will untap all of everything that you tapped, mainly your will, and then the previous will that you had will empty. Similar to mana emptying in Magic the Gathering, your will empty as you untap. So this is a lot different than Magic because you don't get extra chance to play your will. Usually you'll play things at the end of your opponent's turn in order to get the max value. In Force of Will, you can do a lot of things on your upkeep before you untap all of your stones. Some things you can do is do damage to your opponent with those will, pump your resonators. There's a lot of depth and extra strategy that goes into this upkeep phase, so it's very important to understand how it works. Once you enter your main phase, you will try to play your mana, or in this case, you will call a stone. What you do is you rest your untapped ruler. Resting is the Force of Will name for tapping. So you will rest your ruler, and you will take the top card of your stone deck and put it onto the field. And this is basically how you play your mana base, or your stone base in this case. Very different than Magic the Gathering, because in Magic the Gathering there's plenty of chances to miss a land drop or mess up and only play 1 land per turn. In Force of Will, it's very similar. You will only get 1 stone per turn, but you will never miss a stone drop unless you choose to. So once you enter your main phase, now you get into the kind of nitty-gritty of the way phases flow in Force of Will. You can do everything that you can do in Magic in your main phase. Play your sorceries or your creatures or resonators in this case. However, once you go to your battle phase, when your battle phase is over, you will go back to your main phase. There is no main phase 2, there's no main phase 1, it's main phase and battle phase, and they are interchangeable. You can go from your main phase to your battle phase, to your main phase, to your battle phase, to your main phase. So battling is very different in this card game. Essentially, this lets you play a lot of different tricks that I will explain later. So your battle phase consists of attacking with only one of your resonators. Now, like Force of Will, attacking rests your resonators, but you only attack one card at a time. Unlike Magic the Gathering, in Force of Will, you can attack different targets. You can attack the opponent, or you can attack a resonator that is tapped or rested. Resonators with precision are also able to attack untapped resonators. So this is different in that any resonator can attack a rested resonator, but only a resonator with the keyword precision can attack an untapped resonator. Another real important difference between battling is blocking in Magic and Force of Will. Now in Magic, there's a lot of little tricks you can do. You can block, sacrifice your creature. Blocking, you can block and tap your resonator or your creature. In Force of Will, blocking is a lot different. The first difference is that you tap to block with your resonator. This means that you cannot declare blocks and then tap your resonator, stuff like that. It also means that your resonator can be attacked during their next battle phase because it is a legal target to be attacked. There's also no double blocking in Force of Will. Magic of the Gathering, you can double, triple, and quadruple and block with as many creatures as you can put in front of the attacker. In Force of Will, you are not able to do this. You can declare one blocker and that is it. On top of that, there is no shadow blocking. Now, for some people who might not know Magic terms, shadow blocking is when you block and then that creature is removed for however it is removed, and the creature that is attacking remains blocked. That means it will not do damage unless it has something like trample. In Force of Will, this is vastly different, and it really is a very big crux of the game. When you declare blockers and that blocker is removed, the damage will go through to the original target. So if I am being attacked, I will take that damage. If my resonator is being attacked, my resonator will take that damage if my blocker dies. That's something that is very important to remember because it makes kill spells and removal much more complicated to play around. Now, when I talked about battle phases, you can enter your battle phase multiple times. This means if you have 5 resonators, you will have to enter your battle phase 5 times in order to attack with each resonator. This allows a lot of plays because you can enter your battle phase, attack, and then during your next main phase, you can play another resonator with swiftness and attack with that resonator. Swiftness is very similar to haste in Magic. So it's very important to realize that there are multiple battle phases and there will be multiple main phases on top of that. Now, after you finish battling and you've attacked with all of your resonators that you would like to attack with, you go back to your main phase one last time and then you finish up. And as usual, just like in Magic, you go to your end step and everything gets resolved, and that's pretty much the same. There's not too much of a difference at all between Magic and Force of Will. Now I kind of want to get into the kind of little things that I couldn't find a spot for in the flow of the game and the setup of the game. These are just little differences that are hard to that don't really fit anywhere, that are just basic game difference. The first one is that in Magic you have cards that are instants, or your creature will have flash. In Force of Will it is very different. Cards will have a keyword called quick cast, and their mana symbols will have lightning around them. What this means is that this card can be played at instant speed, but it does not have the term instant in it. That's basically all that means. So you'll have to watch out for cards that have quick cast and in your mind think, okay, this card has instant and I can be played at instant speed, and that's all that means. So in Magic the Gathering, cards will fizzle if there's illegal targets. In Force of Will, this is not the case. There's little differences where if I play a card with an illegal target in Magic, and then part of the spell effect is I draw a card, I will not draw that card because the entire spell is countered and fizzles. In Force of Will, cards will do as much as they are able to. So if I have a card that says target Resonator, and then I will draw a card, if that Resonator becomes an illegal target, I will still get to draw my card. Force of Will goes by the saying, do as much as the card is able to, or do as much as you can. It's very important to remember that cards do not fizzle in Force of Will. So there's a couple of keyword differences between the two games. There's quite a lot of keywords. I'm not going to go into all of them. I'll try and do a quick tally of what cards mean. So Pierce is similar to Trample. Swiftness is similar to Haste. Quick Cast is similar to Instant. Enter is similar to Enter the Battle abilities. Flying is Flying, obviously. Drain is very similar to Lifelink, and Bane is similar to Death Touch. Now, the main issue that I wanted to get into is that First Strike is completely different from Magic the Gathering. I wouldn't say completely different, but it is very different. In Magic the Gathering, there's a First Strike battle step, and both defenders, both blockers and attackers get this First Strike battle step. In Force of Will, there is a First Strike damage resolution and battle step, but it is only available to attacking Resonators with First Strike. So First Strike will only work when your Resonator is attacking. It will not work when it is blocking. And that's a really key difference that you need to make sure you watch out for, because you could fall into a trap very easily. There's also no double strike in Force of Will. Now, I want to talk about additions. Additions, you can basically view them as artifacts / enchantments. Really, they're closer to artifacts though. Now, when you try to use an addition to attach it like an enchantment to your Resonator, it works as an artifact with the equip cost. It does not work like enchantments where you play it from your hand to enchant creatures or enchantment auras. It works as an artifact where you play it and then you cast the equip cost at sorcery speeds, and then it gets attached to your Resonator. And all the same targets and legalities are the same between the equip and the additions. That's basically about it. Now, unlike in the Commander format, when your ruler flips to their opposing side and they do Judgment, they enter the field as a J/Resonator. And what happens is that if that J ruler dies, it will flip back onto its ruler side and it will lose the ability to Judgment at all. Now, this is very different than in Commander, where if your commander dies, he'll go back to the command zone, but you can now pay 2 extra to play him again. And that's a very different thing that happens in Force of Will. The only way to keep your Judgment ability is to have a ruler that has Imperishable. And Imperishable basically means when it flips, it does not lose its Judgment ability. Because every other J ruler, when it dies, it will re-enter the ruler side with all of its abilities, except for the ability to Judgment and flip back over. So another difference between Force of Will and Magic is that in Force of Will, your Summoning Sickness for your Resonators begins at the beginning of any turn. What this means is that I can play a Resonator, and coming into my opponent's turn, I now get to use activate abilities or do anything that a Resonator without Summoning Sickness could do. Now, one little thing that I found different in Magic is that Indestructible can be bypassed by getting a creature to 0 toughness, by subtracting toughness from it. In Force of Will, it's not entirely the same thing. So Force of Will has a clause that says this creature cannot be destroyed. There's a keyword for that now also, it's called Eternal. And what this means is that in Force of Will, if something is at 0 toughness or 0 defense, the game causes it to be destroyed, instead of a state-based action like in Magic where the Resonator is destroyed or removed because it has 0 toughness. In Force of Will, it is counted as destroyed, and because it is counted as destroyed in the comprehensive rule set, it will not actually die when it has 0 defense, when it has Eternal or this card cannot be destroyed, that rule text on it. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. There's a lot of stuff about the rune deck and how to play runes and how to play your commanders and how to Judgment. That's not really one of the differences or similarities between Magic, so I don't really want to get into that because it's more about the rules and not about what's different between the two rules. They're pretty much a completely different set of rules that you have to learn in addition to Everything else, it's not something that they borrowed from Magic or something you can relate it to Magic with. This is something that is completely different, and Force of Will only has it. So I'm not going to get into those things, but that's pretty much it for the video. I hope this kind of enlightens you guys, or helps kind of take the edge off of Force of Will besides those couple of differences, and you'll get accustomed to them really quickly. It's really a fun game. I hope you guys enjoy, and that's about it for us. I hope you guys enjoyed this teaching video, and I'll see you around the corner.